Hello and welcome for all who are here today on our most recent webinar, which we host every other week. Anyone who's listening, definitely subscribe because we're throwing out a lot of great content in terms of through a webinar format. Today we are covering canonicals and URL structure for SEO. And this is a series of technical SEO webinars that we're publishing. So with me, I have Jill, and Jill is, she leads our SEO practice here at Rise. Jill, you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Jill, and yep, I lead the SEO practices. Nice to meet everyone.
And my name is Ben. I'm the founder of Rise Marketing Group. So I'm super excited for today's content. We're going to cover a topic that a lot of people just have a ton of questions about. Oh, what's a canonical URL? I feel like most website owners have heard of it, but they're not exactly sure what that is. And same thing for digital marketers and even for SEOs out there that practice this. They may loosely understand what a canonical URL is. In this webinar, we're really going to demystify what canonical URLs are, how to use it, and then even getting into the appropriate structure for URLs and how that can benefit SEO. So let's get into today's content. We're going to cover a few different things, really look at canonicals from all different layers. First, we're going to go into overall what are canonical URLs, and next we're going to get into duplicate content and how that can impact SEO, which can definitely throw a negative signal towards SEO. We're going to break down how to canonicalize a URL, and it really varies per platform. And we're going to talk about some of the major platforms that we can canonicalize URLs, including WordPress and Wix and some other platforms. Moving on, we're going to get into URL structure and how that impacts SEO. There's a lot of questions regarding URL structure and keyword stuffing, and should you keyword stuff? Does that impact, and what things that you should look out for? And especially if you're creating a new website or really planning ahead for your existing website, you should really give a lot of time and consideration on how to set up the appropriate URL structure, which is both going to help out the user experience as well as just general SEO. And then we're going to get into some URL best practices. So again, if you are interested in growing your organic traffic or setting up the solid foundation for your website, this is definitely a really good webinar for you. So let's get into it. A common question that we get is, what is a canonical URL? So Jill, would you mind sharing with everyone, what is a canonical URL?
Sure. A canonical URL is normally one that's chosen to represent a group of duplicate or very similar pages. You can either choose to set the URL yourself, the canonical URL, or you can have Google choose the URL for you. In that screenshot there, you can see in Google Search Console, you'll be able to tell in Google Search Console for any given web page whether there's a user declared canonical or if Google has declared it canonical that's different than the one that you've set. The one thing about letting Google set your canonical for you is that you could risk them declaring the wrong canonical URL to be the set URL. And then you can also risk it not getting indexed, because it is confusing to Google, as it seems like duplicate content when you have more than one variant of a page. You don't want to risk lowering your search rankings or leaving pages unindexed because of that duplicate content.
Yep. And this screenshot, where did this come from?
So that is a screenshot from Google Search Console. There's a search bar in Google Search Console where you can put in any of your page URLs, and you'll be able to see under the indexing area whether there is a set canonical or not.
Excellent. Yeah, and are there any pages that people should maybe look to see if there's a canonical, maybe pages that have similar content to other pages?
So there's a lot of reasons why pages might have different variants. So for in e-commerce, for example, your product pages may have multiple variants of the same product on a given web page. So if you have a certain product that comes in different colors, you might have the color represented in the URL for that page. So the canonical URL would encompass all of those URLs, so that not all of those URLs with each color are getting indexed. It's just one URL per page that's getting indexed in Google search results. That way it's providing a unique value to users who are able to see it in search results and navigate to that page. Another example of having duplicate content is normally you'll have the HTTPS secure protocol URL as their set canonical. You'll also have a different one that's for HTTP. That's not the secure one. That one you don't want to be indexed. You want to have just that HTTPS indexed, but there will be two variants. So you'll have to set that canonical.
Got it. Yeah, and that's super helpful just to tell Google that this is the one that you should be focusing on versus crawling an index, all these duplicate pages, and just throws off a bunch of mixed signals. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. And you gave some examples right here of just kind of the different canonicals that you may want to consider. I know you talked about products. Anything else that any other examples here?
Yep, so those are great examples to see. So yeah, so that first one is the product one. So you can see that second variant down, you see product sizing in there. If there's more than one color, so that one's color specified as being red. If there's a red and a green product, but it's the same type of product on the same page, you don't want both of those indexed. So you would just have the product name, as you can see under that set canonical at the top. And then on the other side, for blogs, there's never really a reason why users would want to navigate to the second page of a blog section. You would always want them to go to that first page so they can flip through the pages themselves. So that's when you would set the canonical URL to be that main page.
Yep, definitely. Again, just telling Google that this is the primary page that you should focus in the original one. And also, if any of these sub pages, so for example, these product pages for e-commerce, different variants, color variants, let's say the red shoe is canonicalized to the main product, that's still going to pass any link equity that has from that original variant. But again, this is just remove duplicate content. And even for e-commerce shops, it's good to really point to that main canonical to the core pillar product that maybe you get the most sales out of, or just kind of like that hero product. Excellent. Thanks for sharing those examples. Now, duplicate content has severe implications with SEO. Do you mind sharing what duplicate content impact on SEO is?
Yep. In an ideal website, you wouldn't have any duplicate content on a site, but as your site grows, you're going to find that there's more reasons why you may need duplicate content, or you may have duplicate content on the site. And this has a lot of implications with SEO and how Google views those pages. So it can really confuse search engines when there's multiple variations of a page that are able to be indexed. For one, it leaves Google to determine which one of those is the priority variant for that page, and that they might just not have an accurate answer to which one is the priority variant. You might have a disagreement there. And then the second one is that there's no additional value for multiple URLs going to the same page to be indexed. So with Google, their goal for search results is that each result that a user clicks into from search results is going to have a unique value and unique content in there. If you have two URLs going to the same page, then that's not really going to add any additional value to those users. They're not going to see anything new. And then the last one is that if there's no canonical set, then you risk an important page not even getting indexed.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. You might have some variant of a page that Google's thinking is the canonical that should be the most important page, where reality it's not. So it's always good to check that. So anyone who is listening, it's okay if occasionally you do have duplicate content, but if you do, make sure that you set up the appropriate canonicals, just so that way it doesn't give mixed signals to the engines and also create a poor experience for the user. How would we set up a canonical URLs?
So to set up a canonical URL, it really depends on how your site is, where your site is hosted, and whether that hosting platform requires any sort of plugin to be able to set the canonical. So for example, if you have your site through WordPress, WordPress often requires a plugin. One example of that is using Yoast. Yoast is a major plugin that they use that just allows you to easily manage your on-page SEO, such as metadata, canonical URLs, and you'll be able to see your primary keywords on there as well. But other platforms such as Wix, they'll have a built-in feature where you'll be able to set your canonical URL or review your canonical URLs. And there's always alternative options for setting up these canonicals. So one example is redirecting all of your variants to that canonical URL. That's going to make it really easy to determine which one is the priority URL. Another one is that canonical link. So if you have PDF pages or any other non-HTML pages, you'll be able to add that to your HTTP header.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone who's listening has any questions regarding their unique website or platform that they're on, definitely feel free to drop a chat or contact us directly. But there's a few ways of going about it. Yoast is probably one of the easiest ones through WordPress, but Yoast isn't accessible with all web platforms. So definitely feel free to reach out. But most importantly is that you do set canonicals. If you do have some level of duplicate content, you need to send the correct signals over to Google. A question that we get quite a bit is, do URLs impact SEO? Jill, what's your take on this?
So this goes a little bit beyond canonical URLs. So just looking at the URL structure in general, it often just has a very minor direct influence on your search rankings. So the biggest, most important thing to remember is just to make sure that your URLs are easy to read and understand for both users and search engines. And by doing it for users first, you're really improving that positive user experience that you can get. Users will be able to see your URL and kind of understand what the main purpose of that page is. And you'll be able to also put in target keywords for the URLs. So oftentimes you'll have a primary keyword in the title of the URL. You can also include in the title of the page, you'll also be able to include that in the URL.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like maybe years ago, this was a stronger ranking signal to keyword stuff URLs and just buy domains just based off of the keywords that it has within it. But it seems like it's not as important. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, case in point, our URL is risemkg.com. And we rank for a bunch of SEO type keywords or advertising keywords. So you don't necessarily have to stuff URLs with specific keywords in it. And Jill, as you mentioned, always focus number one on the user experience. Generally, if you do that with all things SEO, Google is going to reward you because it's a better experience. And at the end of the day, Google wants what's best for the user, and it's going to rank those pages much higher. What are some of the URL best practices, which will be super helpful for folks that are just starting a website or looking to reassess their current URL structure?
So a lot of these URL best practices are pretty straightforward. Like we were mentioning, it's really important to just make sure you're providing a positive user experience. So as long as your URLs read very clearly, you're oftentimes going to be utilizing the best practices naturally. Some of those are just making sure that if you have multiple words in your slug, so for example, if you're writing a blog on best SEO practices, you'll want to have a dash separating those words, best SEO and then practices. Oftentimes it's a dash instead of an underscore. So I would remember to use that instead. It just makes it easier to read for users, and it also makes it a little easier to read for Google as well. The next one is just utilizing important keywords. So this doesn't always happen, but if there is a primary keyword in the meta title, it makes it very easy to incorporate that keyword into the URL as well. And it just makes it easy for people who are searching for that topic to just understand that that is what that page is covering. The next one is not to use only numbers in the URL. Almost every page on your website is going to have some sort of content or some sort of title on the page. So there's really never many reasons why you would want to have just numbers in your URL. And then just making sure that you're using that secure protocol as a best practice. Avoiding dates in your URL is a big one. Dates oftentimes for something like WordPress might automatically end up in your URL. You'll want to avoid that as it doesn't really add any sort of additional value to that URL or to that user. It just ends up making it a super long URL and just kind of confusing. And the last thing is just making sure that those URLs are simple and easy to read. So sometimes that might even mean getting rid of stop words such as the or and, because you're still going to get across the same meaning.
Yep. Yeah, really good best practices here. And just speaking from experience with some of the clients that we work with, I mean, it's amazing. There are websites out there that don't have the secure protocol, that are still HTTP. We ran across one on a client within this past year that we helped power and are continuing to help power their marketing. And we're shocked that they did not have secure protocol when Google said even years ago that will impact ranking. So always make sure you have that. And dates, yeah, it's so funny that some WordPress sites, it's just automatically defaulted to include the date, and not necessarily, and actually can really backfire, because let's say you have an excellent blog post that is pretty much almost timeless, or it has a pretty long shelf life. If you have a date, and let's say it's 2 years old, it almost just puts a negative perception on that content, because then folks will be like, oh, is this even relevant to me anymore? So don't have that. And then, as you mentioned, just keep things as clean as possible. And this can even get into the overall structure of your site, of if you have different types of categories, you could have the domain category / any type of pages that you're looking for. So it's always good just to really take a few steps back, understand the overall architecture of your website, and making sure that the URLs are following these best practices. Anything else to add on this slide, Jill?
I think that pretty much covers it.
Excellent. And that pretty much wraps up this webinar. Again, we're doing a series on technical SEO webinars. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. We're putting out a webinar every other week. And of course, if anyone is watching this and needs help assessing Canonicals, or even wants some insights into their URL structure, which will both impact user experience and SEO, visit us, risemkg.com, or my email's right there, ben@risemkg. But Jill, always a pleasure, and looking forward to our next chat in 2 weeks, where we're going to get into all things schema.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.